Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gloria Shkurti Özdemir, and I'm the assistant editor of Inside Turkey Journal. Following the publication of the latest issue on the regional developments and challenges, we are going to organize two panels that are going to discuss the topics that were touched upon the issue. Today's panel will center the attention on three key actors of the region, namely Iran, Qatar, and Turkey. It will focus on the policies towards the Gulf and the region. So first of all, I would like to welcome our speakers, which are Mr. Mahjoob Zweiri, who is joining us from Doha, Qatar, Ali Abo Rezeg and Gökhan Ereli, both joining us from Ankara. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here today. The regions surrounding Turkey, in particular the Middle East and the Gulf, due to its highly strategic position and also rich natural resources, have always been in the center of attention for the global and great powers. However, unfortunately, at the same time, these regions have been in the center of attentions for conflicts, crisis, political instability, and sectarian politics. With that said, Iran, Qatar, and Turkey have always been important actors in the region and deserve a special attention in understanding their policies. Mr. Zweiri will enclose us how the Iranian regime has deployed various intricate internal and external strategies to secure the regime against threats and guarantee its survivability. Mr. Rezeg, on the other hand, will focus on Qatari position in the region and review the dynamics and geopolitical interests that drove Doha to embrace a pro-change policy. And our last guest, Mr. Gökhan Ereli, will focus on Turkey's Gulf relations and the latest developments in that regard. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Mahjoob Zweiri. He is a director of the Gulf Studies Center and associate professor at Qatar University. He is an expert, especially in the Iranian and Middle Eastern studies. So, Mr. Zweiri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gloria. It's a pleasure to be with you and the colleagues this afternoon. And thanks for Turkish Insight for inviting me. You know, the debate about Iran was always, occupying, I would say, the center of the discussion in the Middle East, especially in the last 40 years. And this debate was always, paying more attention to regional role, what Iran is doing in the region, and why Iran is doing this in the region, why Iran has a nuclear program, why why Iran behaves in such political way in the region. Actually, after years of working in Iran since I would say 1999. In last 2 years, I start thinking of, what makes Iran surviving, considering, all of those confrontations, with America, with the West, with the neighboring countries, it's always there was a confrontation, with Turkey, and sometimes there was a confrontation. With Iraq, there was a war 8 years. With Pakistan, there was differences. With Afghanistan, with India, with the Arab countries. So there were always sort of confrontation and instability and their foreign policy. And also internally, internally there were a lot of anger. 2009, what happened in Iran after the elections, 2017, 18, 19, demonstration every year about the economic situations. So the paper basically tried to look at, what are the main strategies Iran has used to survive and to reduce the impact of all of this pressure on the regime. And when I say survive, I see regime survive, because in a very short sentence, I argue that Iranian regime rely on around 25 million to 30 million people. And those basically the Revolutionary Guard, the retired people, their families, and those are working for the government. If you put them together, they will be around 25 to 30 million people. And those are basically the center of the regime. So how the regime was behaving to survive. The regime mobilized people behind itself using anti-American slogan. So since 1980, death to America, Marg Bar America, has been used, mobilize more people behind the regime, mobilize more Arabs, more Muslims behind the regime, and Iran became the hero in the Muslim world because it does stand against the America. And in the same context, it also took the Palestinian cause in its shoulder and defending the Palestinian cause, and which also bring more support to the Iranian regime. That was inside and outside. So any criticism to Iran, it will be explained that, oh, that is because Iran is actually fighting America. That is because Iran supporting the Palestinian cause, the world against Iran. And Iran actually played the game against the other regimes by saying, you criticize me because I am doing better than you when it comes to the Palestinian question. Because I criticize the America and you cannot criticize the America. Actually, the other countries are in the pocket of the America. By doing so, the American is strengthening its own base internally and externally. That was very important. Now, years in 1991, in 1991, after 10 years of the war with Iraq, and all of this, lost, the invasion of Saddam Hussein to Kuwait, Iran decided overnight that what happened to Kuwait is that's acceptable, and they are supporting Kuwait against Saddam Hussein. That was a very planned, a very smart step. By doing so, basically, they represent themselves to international community as a country, respected international community. Status quo cannot be changed. Invading countries cannot be accepted. And in the same year, they stand shoulder by shoulder with the United States, with other states to defend Kuwait. And few years later on, actually in the same year, Hashim Rafsanjani went to a conference in Senegal and made an interesting speech where he said, actually, why you blame us? He was talking to Muslim members. Why you blame us? We are the brother of you. We are suffering from the Americans, and you should actually help us. After that, a very emotional speech, 16, 17 countries that reopened their embassies in Tehran. 5 years later on, Iran moved internally and opened up the elections to bring a very charismatic leader called Mohammad Khatami. Mohammad Khatami, a religious figure, however, he is more nationalist, more modern, more good-looking person in politics, good speaker, sweet talker, if you can use as well. He emerged as the president of Iran, and he invaded the media in the West, talking about Iran and trying to present Iran differently. And in that time, Clinton started to debate, open discussion with Iran. And this step of electing Mohammad Khatami was a smart step to survive, because the regime was facing internal pressure, economical and political. And to avoid the outcome of this, they opened the platform for the elections, and they basically opened the platform socially. People, they can engage, they can sit, someone can go with his girlfriend to have a coffee outside without someone intervening. They can go to the cinema. No one can stop the girl because of her hijab is not completed and question her. So all of those steps being taken because there was a pressure from within, and to move on beyond this, Mohammad Khatami came. Mohammad Khatami came 8 years in power. They created millions of problems to him. They assassinate few of important cultural figures in 1999 to complicate his job, but still Iran offered the dialogue of civilization, and 2001 United Nations considered this as the main slogan, which being presented by Mohammed Khatami. That was another survival step done by Iran through Mohammed Khatami himself. When Mohammed Khatami, 2002, everything has been changed with the emerging of a new photo of Natanz nuclear website. That was a disaster because every achievement Mohammed Khatami did is actually gone, and Iran had to defend itself again to explain what happened on this nuclear site. Now, Mohammed Khatami left. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad came to power. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad came to power with very radical discourse, saying, we'll fight the whole world if you don't want, our nuclear program. We will go ahead and develop up to 20% enriching uranium. They engage in a negotiation. More sanctions forced on Iran, 1737, 1747, 1805, 1801, and Iran, more pressure on Iran. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad left with all of this legacy of the pressure. At last year of his presidency, they start negotiation with the Americans in Oman. And then suddenly we start listening about, there is a possible talk between Iran and the international community. The discussion between Iran and 5+1 was another survival strategy to the regime to achieve two things. One, to tell the Iranian that, look, I do what I should not do, which is I hate the Americans. I don't want to talk to the Americans, but because of you, Iranian, I want to solve your economic problems, I will talk to the Americans. To the international community saying, look, I am pragmatic, I am flexible, I want to solve this problem. You come and help me in doing so. So it was a survival strategy and basically killing two birds in one stone. Of course, the negotiation continued since 2003 until 2015. When the deal signed in 2015, Hassan Rouhani basically said to the Iranians, you see, I promised you to change your economic situation, and look what happened. We signed, and the economic situation will be changed. Unfortunately, a few months later on, Trump came, and then he withdrew from the deal. This is just will tell you how the regime is actually reacting to the challenges, and try to be not necessarily ideological as been seen. Actually, sometimes it show more pragmatic step, more pragmatic understanding, simply because the whole debate, the whole thing about the nuclear issue is regime survival. The sanction itself has hit the regime hardly. So to engage in the discussion on the negotiation is actually regime survival. And this is now the debate, whether the regime will go to the 6th or 7th round of negotiation in Vienna in 2 weeks, or actually they will say, no, we don't need the negotiation. I don't expect that they will reject the election. They will go for the elections because that is one of the channels for regime survival, especially considering three facts. Crisis in Afghanistan. Taliban is not a friend of Iran. Crisis with Azerbaijan. There's no doubt what will happen with the outcome of that. A new political platform in Iraq. The friend of Iran has lost, and there are new political faces, and Iran has to make sure that those faces are not basically affecting badly the interest of Iran. I think these are just quick, I would say quick summary to what has been explained on the paper by also using regime survival theoretical framework to understand the behavior of Iran. The Palestinian cause itself is a story. It's very interesting to know that the Iranians actually, when they used the Palestinian questions, they rejected the mediation of, for example, Yasser Arafat in 1980 to mediate between them and the Americans. Why? Because they want to continue the confrontation with the United States, because it was a tool to mobilize people behind the regime and to survive the regime for a long time. Thank you so much.
Very much.
On time?
Yeah, you're on time. Thank you very much. That's perfect.
Star. Give me a star on my face.
Of course. That was a very thorough and very good analysis of Iranian survival strategy, let's say, both domestically and internationally. We'll have some questions after the other speakers as well. So now I would like to invite the second speaker, Mr. Ali Abo Rezeg, coming from Ankara Yildirim Beyazıt University. He focuses mainly on the Gulf studies and Palestinian issue as well. Today, he is going to talk about Qatar policies and explain what he wrote to Inside Turkey's article. The floor is yours, Mr. Abo Rezeg.
Thank you actually for having me in this presentation. Actually, at the beginning, according to your panel, I'm going to talk about the latest developments of the Qatari foreign policy, and then I'll try to connect these developments with my article published for Inside Turkey. The latest three developments, actually, I'm going to focus are the Qatar-sponsored talks between the US and Taliban, which, as I see, Qatar emerges as the regional or the biggest regional winner of the Afghan endgame. Then the country is having the first ever Shura Council in the country's history, with the elections actually went smoothly. Also, at the latest, we have significant meetings and visits on the regional level. Jordanian King Abdullah has just arrived to Qatar 2 weeks before, and meetings between Saudi Arabia leaders and Qatari officials, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Egypt. The first, why Qatar is the biggest winner of the Afghanistan endgame. First, Qatar made a big blow actually to its competitor in the region, which is the United Arab Emirates, as the United Arab Emirates was the first country in the Gulf to offer hosting the US Taliban talks in 2018. And this bid, unfortunately, was totally failed. Why it succeeded in Qatar and didn't succeed in the United Arab Emirates? Two are Gulf states, the two are rich countries, two are Muslim countries, and the two countries are allies with the US. It has something to do, and this is something I spoke in detail in my article. This is the negotiation environment. It's the cultural factor, the cultural effect. I think the Taliban leaders feel themselves they are negotiating in, how can I say, in a hostile environment to the Islamic political Islam movements in the region and across the globe, which they didn't feel the same when they were negotiating with the US in Qatar. And then Qatar has proved itself as an honest broker or honest mediator in the region, actually, since the rise of Amir Hamad, the father, in mid-90s. Qatar has been spearheading a very active, not only active, it's a very proactive foreign policy. This foreign policy was culminated in a very successful mediation attempts in different places. Qatar succeeded in Sudan, in Darfur, between Fatah and Hamas, in Lebanon, between Hezbollah and Lebanese rivals, in Eritrea, Djibouti, and different places in the world. Unfortunately, this image as an honest broker or honest mediator in the region, this image was partially hurt, partially damaged by the Qatar foreign policy towards the Arab Spring. Qatar was the only Arab monarchy that totally backed the revolutionary wave hit the Arab region since 2011. Qatar was taking a broad change policy in Yemen, in Tunisia, in Syria, in Egypt, and Libya, and different places of the Arab world. The success of the Taliban-US agreement reaffirmed that Doha can do something big regarding the mediation efforts in the region and even across the globe. Doha became an honest and trusted mediator for the US and the political Islam movements in the region. As I mentioned, the alliance between Qatar and the US has been boosted, fostered with the US due to these developments. And it showed actually the failure of the bids, mainly from the neighboring Arab monarchies, the bids of these countries to demonize Qatar and show it as one of the states sponsoring terrorism in the region. Many of the lobbying groups actually in the US were paid high to show that Qatar is a state sponsoring terrorism during Trump's era for sure. This proved to be a close, trusted ally to the US. Qatar proved to be a gate for the Western powers planning to have good ties with the Islamist groups in the region. A gateway for countries looking forward back channel talks with the Islamist groups, and a gateway also for the Islamist groups want to hold back channel talks with the Western powers and the US in particular. It also showed that Qatar, how can I say, as it's mentioned by many writers, I'm totally rejecting this view, as Qatar if having insatiable appetite for backing Islamist groups in the region. No, actually, which is Amir Tamim spoke to Christian Amanpour in just 4 or 5 years ago in an interview in the CNN, and he asked that the two parties, the US and Western powers in one side, and the Islamist groups at the other side, both are wanna take advantage of Qatar as a trusted mediator to hold talks. Qatar as well is proving itself as a gateway for regional powers and even the EU, who have future interests to have ties with Afghanistan's Taliban. For Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and to a lesser extent, Egypt. Those countries, for sure, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, wanted to use Qatar as a key to outreach the Afghan powerful actors in the future, which would help Doha and increase its influence as a pivotal and unsurpassable political player in the region. Turkey wanted the airport and the humanitarian issues there in Afghanistan. Saudi Arabia looking for more influence in the country, security cooperation with Taliban, and Egypt, for a lesser context, Egypt wanna have security cooperation with the Taliban regime. You know very well that we have Egyptian remnants there who were fighting for Al-Qaeda, for Daesh in Afghanistan. Egypt somehow wanna have contacts with the Taliban. This is the first for the Afghanistan endgame. Now for the Shura Council, Qatar, just Qatari people elected this month. For example, first, this Shura Council is the first elected council or parliament in the country's history, which is, how can I say, a symbolic democratic step in an absolute monarchy. The move has nothing to do with plans for going to constitutional monarchy for sure, but it aims at least to increase the people's participation in the political process, which is a very good, how can I say, goal. This entitlement actually came as Qatar had been for a long. Qatar as a country supporting the change or the revolutionary change in the Arab world, at least it has to do something regarding democratic process from inside. Qatar Amir as well, Amir Tamim, in different occasions, actually, he was keen on what's called the international visibility of his country, how the Western and the US, how the indigenous audiences are looking to his country. He's, how can I say, looking forward to have a benign political structure in the country where his people, how can participate somehow in the political process, which Kamrava, the Professor Mahran Kamrava, calls it the popular legitimacy between the peoples and the ruling regime. Not to mention that this comes actually a year before the World Cup, which is the country is looking forward to receive millions of visitors or hundreds of thousands of visitors next year on the country. As the Qatari Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani called this democratic experience as an experiment in the future of the country. The third dynamic I'm focusing on is the shuttle diplomacy, the Doha and its neighbors having these months. There was a very successful meeting between the Qatari Emir and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Visits and meetings with Mohammed bin Salman, meetings with Tahnoun bin Zayed, the intelligence chief of the United Arab Emirates, and a very successful visit from the Jordanian king to Doha. I'm quickly gonna analyze these meetings or shuttle diplomacy in the region between Qatar and its neighboring countries. Actually, Qatar needs Egypt the same Egypt needs Qatar. Qatar has large investments in the country, in Egypt, and regional players, most importantly Qatar, know very well the Egyptian political, cultural, and economic weight. There is Egyptian active role in the Palestinian cause, which Qatar cannot ignore. And we have hundreds of thousands of Egyptian people working in Qatar. And one of the main dynamics, and this was mentioned in my article, one of the main dynamics behind the Qatari support for the Arab Spring to have a footprint in Egypt, which Saudi Arabia in the past was blocking any Gulf country, mainly Qatar, not to have any influence in Egypt. Qatar was looking forward having any political influence in the post-Arab Spring Egypt. And as you all know, now Qatar has to cooperate more with the Egyptian current regime, given the fact that the Egyptian opposition is fragmented and has no vision and has no strategy for the upcoming years. For Saudi Arabia as well, Saudi want to benefit of the Qatar's close ties with Taliban, as I mentioned. So the officials hailed the successful diplomacy done by Qatar in the Afghanistan endgame, and we have 2 days before published interview with the Saudi ambassadors in Doha. He was hailing the successful Qatari diplomacy. He was saying that Qatar is becoming a model. Yes, the Saudi ambassador is saying Qatar is becoming a model for us in the effective diplomacy, as this diplomacy is fostering cooperation among the GCC countries. Saudi Arabia as well is under pressure nowadays, under pressure of, at one hand, of opening the Saad al-Jabri issue in the US, under US pressure because of the human rights violations in Yemen and because of the attacks of Houthis on its territories. So the royals know very well that Qatar can help in this regard in improving ties with Iran and solving the Yemeni crisis for the near future. Very significant factor is also the World Cup of 2022, the next year. And this is the Saudi ambassador in Doha focused on. He said exactly, we are ready to help Doha in any way possible to make the World Cup, this important sporting event, succeed, which is something, if for example, something goes wrong, I think Saudi Arabia or Qatar might ask the Saudi help in this regard, which Saudi for sure is gonna help. Meeting with the Jordanian king, Qatar has billions of dollars in investment in Jordan, and the first visit to Qatar by King Abdullah since 2013. Jordan needs Qatar as the country is passing through an economic crisis because of coronavirus and the pressure practiced against Jordan because of its view from the deal of the century during Trump's era. And there is bids to increase Gulf influence in Jerusalem, which is the King Abdullah. The second is the custodian of the holy places in Jerusalem. There is something very interesting also in the Qatari-Jordanian relations. We have Qatar is competing with the United Arab Emirates on the seaports issue, and Qatar has plans. Qatar is eyeing to invest in the Aqaba port in Jordan. This is the only and sole seaport in Jordan with having a strategic location. Qatar expanded Hamad's port. Qatar made a successful takeover for the Akdeniz port in Antalya in Turkey, and Qatar is eyeing to do something similar in the Aqaba port in Jordan. Lots of which for the latest development, and I'm going to briefly go to the main dynamics in my article. Why the UAE officials are visiting Qatar and the Qatari officials visiting United Arab Emirates. Qatari FM foreign minister was in Abu Dhabi just 2 weeks before. This shows actually the failure of the United Arab Emirates strategy towards Qatar, the failure to defame Qatar and demonize Qatar. And it has something to do with the end of the Trump's era and the US direction to reduce military presence in the region. And actually, there is something new in the United Arab Emirates foreign policy to foster economic ties with neighbors, mainly Turkey, Iran, and Israel. Also, there is something very important. There is a Saudi decision to withdraw, to move the international companies or regional headquarters of the international companies from Dubai to Riyadh, which actually will badly affect the Abu Dhabi's economy. Today, for example, today in the morning, 44 companies left Dubai for the Saudi capital, Riyadh. At last, there is actually a strive. There is strive for regional power from Qatar that was coincided with the rise of the two Hamads, the father Hamad bin Khalifa and his strong Prime Minister Hamad bin Jassim Al Thani, and this strive actually was kept after the rise of Amir Tamim in 2013. This is something, it has something to do with the personal diplomacy, which Henry Kissinger mentioned in his book Diplomacy, that personality matters in taking decisions in the political affairs. Actually, it showed the soft power, the Qatari soft power of Al Jazeera, think tanks, tourism centers, research centers, Qatar Foundation for Education, Qatari Charity, how those people, how the Qatari elite, how those people are investing in their capabilities and their financial capabilities in particular. We have other Gulf countries, we have Kuwait, we have Oman, we have rich Gulf countries, but they don't take advantage of the capabilities, the financial capabilities they have as Qatar does. The place Qatar has in the regional and international arena, actually it has something to do with challenging Saudi hegemony over the Gulf. I'm calling it challenging Saudi hegemony, not competing with the Saudi Arabia. Qatar is competing with the United Arab Emirates, but it cannot compete with Saudi Arabia. It is challenging Saudi hegemony over the Gulf, as Saudi Arabia is the biggest sister or the mother of the Gulf. And Qatar wanna keep its independent foreign policy, and if this foreign policy contradicts with the Saudi foreign policy, it doesn't matter. It wanna adopt its independent foreign policy that serves the Qatari and only Qatar national interests. And actually, as I mentioned, competing with the Emirati ambitions in the region, ties with the US and Islamist groups, as I mentioned, gateway for the back channel talks. And also one of the Doha's key geopolitical goals was to play on the regional contrasts with a view to gaining the trust of the confluential parties, mainly the US and Islamists. As I mentioned, you got Qatar emphasizing on different occasions that, for example, Hamad bin Jassim and the Qatari foreign ministers and Emir Tamim, in different occasions, they mentioned that they believe, the country leaders believe, that Islamists should share power within the respective countries they have. If Islamists win democratically and in peaceful ways, then they have to share powers with the countries they are living in. That's why they got the Islamists' confidence in different parts of the region. And as I mentioned, there is a cultural and ethical dynamic haven for the oppressed, or the Ka'bat al-Madyum, as it's mentioned in Arabic, as Qatar is hosting dozens, if not hundreds, of opposition figures from different places in the region. Also, last minute, there are actually, as I mentioned in my article, there are many changes that took place in the international system and after the end of the Cold War, and gave a space for the small countries, mainly Qatar, to play on the regional and international levels at the same time. Qatar also was among the few countries that they didn't feel the shock of the 2008 economic crisis. Also, there is the absence of the domestic threats. We have the GDP per capita of the Qataris is among the highest in the world. That's why people highly endorse the country's pro-Palestine, pro-Arab Spring, pro-change foreign policy, which is called, as I mentioned, the popular legitimacy. Also, and this is my last point of view, we have thousands of Arab experts living in the country and give consultations to the ruling elite, to the ruling family. We have non-Qataris, they are heading the big think tanks, big research centers in the country. It's not only the Qatari nationals that give consultations or give expertise to the royal family, experts from different nationalities in the Arab world. That's it. And from international experts as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alir. That was a very good presentation of yours and very informative as well. We'll come back together to the questions section of the panel, but now we are going to go to our last speaker, Mr. Gökhan Ereli. He is the coordinator of Gulf Studies in the Center for the Middle Eastern Studies. His academic interests include the Middle East policies, and he will focus on the developments regarding Turkey and Gulf relations. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for the invitation for this great panel, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the recent issues with esteemed Dr. Mahjoob Zweiri and Abo Rezeg also. And thank you for them for their insightful and enlightening presentations. I would like to talk about the recent relations between Turkey and the Gulf for the next 20 minutes period. I believe it is unnecessary to make a long presentation in a short time and listing all the developments from the 2000s to now. Instead, my presentation will be more about the post-2017 period in the relations between Turkey and the Gulf. Between the relations Gulf countries and Turkey, from an analytical point of view, let me walk you through the implications, repercussions of the recent political, social, and military relations between Turkey and Gulf. Relations between Turkey and Gulf countries have witnessed important developments in recent periods also. After the Arab popular movements in 2010, bilateral relations between Turkey and all the countries in the Gulf, all the GCC countries, came to the regional fore frequently in 2017, in 2018, and in other developments. We see downs and turns in the relations between Turkey and the Gulf, just as relations between Turkey and the Gulf were redefined after the 2010 Arab popular movements. There are reasons for this redefinition in local, regional, and international terms as of 2017 and also 2021 in this period that we are in. Looking at the issues facing the region in a way that capitalizes only Gulf's view or only Turkish foreign policy's view toward the Gulf will complicate our understanding, first of all, will complicate our understanding of the issues. That is why I think it is important to articulate and identify certain developments engulfing Turkey and Gulf both also. First of all, when we look at the relations between Turkey and the Gulf countries from a political and military perspective, the moves and the policies in the conflict zones, especially in Syria, Yemen, Libya, Eastern Mediterranean, and the Horn of Africa, we can say that these conflict zones have played a major role in defining the Turkey and Gulf relations. Also in Syria, in Libya and the Eastern Mediterranean, in Yemen and the East and the Horn of Africa, which includes Dubai, which includes Djibouti, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea. The relations between Turkey and the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and to some extent Bahrain, the relations were conflicting in nature in the Horn of Africa. And although political partnerships in the Gulf and motives of the countries to act together in the Middle East, in the Gulf region, are varied. There are many reasons for the countries to act together. Certain countries in the Gulf have acted together since the 2010 Arab popular movements. As part of their post-Arab popular movements, we can say Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, though not in the Gulf, Egypt, supported military actors and in this way hindered the popular demands in the conflict zone countries. Also, if we come to the nearest recent policies and the recent developments in the region, after 2018, we see that the United Arab Emirates, following Bahrain and United Arab Emirates in a more correct fashion, opened their diplomatic representations in Syria. Saudi Arabia also recently carried out certain detent activities against the Syrian regime. However, Turkey, on the other hand, followed a policy in Syria that is more in the framework of national and regional security and humanitarian aid. For now, we can confidently say that there is no consensus between Turkey and the Gulf countries on the future of Syria. Also in Yemen, in Libya, and the Eastern Mediterranean, Turkey has faced, especially 2 years ago, especially 1 year ago, Turkey has faced serious Gulf countries, the serious setbacks and repercussions, responses for Gulf countries. The Gulf countries in Libya, we know that supported Haftar in Libya and failed to achieve a durable posture with him. And they are not in Libya. The Gulf countries are not in Libya as they once were now. Also in Yemen, the Gulf countries supported the legitimate Hadi government, but Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the first two countries of the Arab coalition that is intervening in Yemen, had a serious policy differentiation in Yemen, with the UAE opting for a divided Yemen by channeling aid, money, and legitimacy for the Southern Transitional Council. Also, Turkey in Yemen, in Libya, and Eastern Mediterranean have acted towards the solution of the crisis, solution of the peace in these areas. Also, although Turkey is in line with Hadi government and the legitimate authority in Yemen, there is no consensus between Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates over a possible role of Turkey in Yemen. That is why there is a recent dispute about the Yemen issue, of course, before the 2021 normalizations period. In the Horn of Africa, we can say that a commercial and geopolitical competition continues between Turkey and the Gulf countries over the ports of these countries, as Dr. Ali has recently emphasized, with the United Arab Emirates, especially at this point, with the help of Dubai Ports World company, DP World, is acquiring many ports and has many investments there, especially in Somaliland, in Puntland, and in Eritrea, though they have withdrawn their personnel and equipment from Eritrea for a close time ago, nearly. Of course, it should not be forgotten that there is an international struggle over the Horn of Africa, not only on the Turkey Gulf line, but also a competition, but also a regional and global competition, including United States, Russia, China, France, and Italy. Also, therefore, the activities in the conflict zones, such as Yemen, Eastern Mediterranean, Syria, Horn of Africa, caused the Turkey and the Gulf relations to cease and to be tense. However, in this period, we see that while Turkey GCC trade was not severely interrupted, the total trade volume of nearly $9 billion in 2010 doubled to 20 and $21 billion in 2017 period. So we can say that there can be many political disruptions, political deterioration of the relations, but this hasn't impeded, this has not stopped countries from seeing each other as a trade partner. In the second half of the 2010, after the Arab popular movements, there were many important developments in the region, affecting both Turkey and affecting both the Gulf as well. Following the passing away of the King Abdullah in Saudi Arabia, the late King Abdullah, in 2015, King Salman's accession to the throne and the rise of Mohammed bin Salman followed. Also, in coup attempt in Turkey was successful overthrown, and there were allegations and claims, especially at the level of high visits of Turkey, high levels of officials from Turkey, that there was an involvement by some Arab Gulf states, which is basically the United Arab Emirates. Also, another process, another development affecting both Turkey and Gulf was the Qatari embargo. As you know, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt, and also, of course, certain Arab countries initiated an embargo against Qatar, and this has led to a regional landscape that is more conflicting in the both local, both national and also international levels. Also, the another issue is the murder of Jamal Khashoggi and the international outrage it created. Also, there is this another important development which is also affecting Turkey and Gulf relations, is the fact that the United Arab Emirates and Israel relations were normalized, especially after Egypt and Jordan many times ago, 25 years ago. The first country to normalize relations with Israel was the United Arab Emirates, and this is followed by Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. Also, Trump-era U.S. withdrawal from the Iranian nuclear deal and the policies and other developments prioritizing Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Israel in the Middle East during the Trump era were actually important developments that affected Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates' relations with Turkey. Also, another development was the fact that there has been a recent implications of COVID-19 global pandemic, and also the economic shrinkage status and economic situations of the Gulf countries were declined and deteriorated to a great extent. In addition to the struggles in the conflict zones between Turkey and the Gulf countries, it should be noted that Turkey and the Gulf countries went through serious tense periods after 2017 as well. The main fundamental reason for the strained relations with the UAE and Turkey was the claim that UAE provided financial support to the 2006 coup attempt in Turkey. For nearly 5 years in the relations between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, this has been the main agenda in both countries' relations. Also, another issue is the Gulf crisis. As you know, Turkey stood by the solution process, mediation, facilitation processes, and peace, how to achieve peace in Qatar's embargo in the Gulf crisis, and also provided political, military, economic, and logistical aid and support to Qatar. Also, in this time, Qatar strengthened its relations with Turkey, and with the help of a Turkish military foothold, Turkish military installments in and around Doha. Also, Qatar, in this period, especially in the Gulf crisis period, Qatar strengthened its relations with Iran and United States as well. In this sense, we can say that the decisions taken in the Trump era by the Trump administration, such as the deal of the century, prioritizing the Israeli state with the detriment of the Palestinian people, and the withdrawal from the Iranian nuclear deal and joint comprehensive plan of action, this agreement created tension in the Turkey-Gulf relations also. However, we can say that with the emergence of structural and regional developments, the active and interventionist attitudes of the Gulf countries in foreign policy somehow, to a great extent, deteriorated. I believe we can make this kind of an argument at this point. And also, the most important regional effects is that Turkey started to use its national resources more actively in its foreign policy, and also Turkey follows a more active foreign policy and military policy in the region. Also, this has led to regressions in the policies of Gulf in Syria, in Libya, and Eastern Mediterranean, and in the Horn of Africa. The two most important developments in terms of these developments, especially in the post-2017 periods, are the COVID-19 pandemic and also the Biden winning the US presidency. Especially Biden winning the US presidency affected the Gulf to a great extent in this period. After these regional and international developments, a general political softening and normalization movements started in the Middle East. There were normalization in the Gulf with the resolution of the Gulf crisis in El Ula in October 2021. Also, there were normalizations and political softening of the relations between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, between Saudi Arabia and Iran also, and between also maybe the most important one, softening of the relations between Turkey and UAE is happening now. Turkey and Gulf relations initially began to improve following the end of the Gulf crisis in El Ula in Saudi Arabia. In this sense, normalization period, the normalization trend that started between Saudi Arabia and Qatar continued with a regional trend, continued with a regional scale, I can say. Besides Turkey, Saudi Arabia, sorry, we can say that besides Turkey, Saudi Arabia experienced political normalization with Qatar and Iran also. Here, actually, I would like to end the presentation with a parenthesis on the normalization of the relations, softening of the relations between the UAE and Turkey, because Turkey-UAE relations somehow can be a prototype for the development of the relations between Turkey and Gulf relations, because many people, including most of the regional experts, saw that the United Arab Emirates and Turkey relations was the most, maybe the most detrimental, maybe the most serious disagreement and disruption of the region. Relations between the two countries, between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, began to improve after high-level contacts, especially in Ramadan. In April, Foreign Minister of Turkey, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, and Abdullah bin Zayed, Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates, held a telephone call in April after long times. Also in the same period, Enver Kargaş, who was the Minister of State Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates, somehow appointed to a less foreign policy related post. And also this was signifying and signaling the UAE's rhetoric, change of rhetoric. Also, the most important development in this respect was the meeting between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and with Tahnoun bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Zayed, the UAE National Security Advisor and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince. Almost after 2 weeks and also after 1 month, I guess, if I'm not wrong, the highest point in relations has been reached with the Mohammed bin Zayed and President Erdogan meeting on a telephone call. One of the reasons I can say for the warming relations and developments in bilateral relations was that it was part of the Turkey and the UAE normalization, was part of a regional normalization trend. Also, as a result of these developments in the region, both countries, both Turkey and United Arab Emirates, seem to have reached a consensus on the intensification of political consultation and dialogue process with each other. Also, as a matter of fact, the investments agreements stated in the meetings of Tahnoun bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Zayed's meetings with President Erdogan, they have to be realized. In this sense, ADA, which is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority International Holdings Company, most of them are headed by Tahnoun bin Zayed, who was visiting Turkey. Also, Abu Dhabi's Royal Group and Aramex are starting to investing in Turkish firms and Turkish other entities. As a result of Turkey-Gulf relations, I need to underline that as a conclusion, Turkey-Gulf relations have evolved downwards as of 2017, but the relations seems to be a higher posture at this year's beginning. Also, Turkey's political relations and trade relations with Kuwait, Oman, and other Gulf countries, they are not yet at the desired level, but certainly they will grow with this improvement. It should be noted that the relations between Turkey and the Gulf have great opportunities in local, national, and international terms, and have the potential, I guess, to include positive developments for each country participating in these relations. Thank you.
I have questions for each of you right now, and I wanted to start with Mr. Mahjoob Zweiri, if possible. As you mentioned in your presentation, you said that Iran is facing now several threats or challenges, let's say, such as in the case of Afghanistan or Azerbaijan crisis. So I was wondering how may or how will these challenges impact Iran-Turkey relations in the future, because we know that Turkey is involved in this crisis as well.
I think Iran is very cautious on how to handle the matters where Turkey is involved. For example, when it comes to Azerbaijan, they are facing another challenge with Russia, and that's the reason why they have to calculate their steps carefully. And also, when it comes to Afghanistan, they know also that Taliban did open a communication channel with Turkey, and that communication could also have impact in the future. So I think Iran trying to test the water before having any action when it comes to those files, and also they are observing what will be the Turkish reaction to the new changes on the government in Iraq, especially when it comes to the Kurdish parties. In summary, always Iran becomes very cautious when it comes to the handling any issue where Turkey is involved on. They don't want to lose Turkey at all. They try to manage any crisis with Turkey. And even in the latest news, when there was capturing a few Iranians who are seen or who are accused of assassinating some former military Iranian leaders, the media of Iran, they try to avoid actually the reaction to that and just leave it as a Turkish story. And leave the Turkish media and government comment on that, trying to distance themselves from the event because they don't want to affect the bilateral relations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zweiri. Now I'm going to pass to Ali Abo Reza. You talked a little bit about the Trump's policies effect in the Qatar policies as well, its relations with Saudi Arabia, and but I was wondering, will there be any change? There will be a change, but what kind of change is going to be now during the Biden's presidency? What is expected from Biden's presidency from Qatar's perspective?
Actually, the change has already took place. We have just months or weeks before Trump's or after the winning of Biden, we have many normalization agreements took place and signed between different rivals in the region. We have the Al-Ula summit, which brought together many of the Gulf rivals together. We have the United Arab Emirates and Turkey at the same point. We have the Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt, and different political actors in the region. And at the same time, we have the Biden decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, and the talks about the Biden's decision or probable decision to withdraw from Iraq as well, which shows that the US is withdrawing somehow from the region, not totally, not completely withdrawing from the region, but at least nothing, no big changes on this regard, but at least there is change when it comes to the Gulf region and Libya as well. We have now the Libyan rivals came together and they are talking about elections soon in the upcoming 2 months or 3 months. I think the situation after Trump, for sure, it differs from the Trump's era. And at last, we have the US is speaking that they are going to open a consulate in East Jerusalem, which the Palestinians were looking forward, actually, and were asking Trump, if you want to at least to talk about the deal of the century, let's recognize that we have a right in East Jerusalem and open your consulate there. I think the changes already took place in the region and in different places as well. And at last, the Saudi Arabia and Iran talks. We have Saudi Arabia and Iran are having talks for 3 months or 4 months now. And both sides, Saudi Arabia and Iran, are saying that these talks are positive. They are talking of having normalized ties soon if they are not sending ambassadors, at least to start with consuls, and then to gradual, how can I say, gradual normalization of ties between the two countries.
Thank you, Ali. Indeed, we have touched a little bit upon the question I had for Gökhan. You mentioned about the normalization movement or normalization trend that's going on in the region right now. And one of the reasons we mentioned right now, it was the change of the Trump-Biden administration. Is there any other reasons behind this? And is there any impact that it will have in the Turkish foreign policy, not only regionally, but globally as well?
Thank you, Ms. Gloria. I can say that there are, of course, there are many reasons for this normalization trend in the Middle East. One of the reasons for that is the economic, how can I say, the economic shrinking of the situations because of COVID-19 periods, of also the interventionist and the more aggressive foreign policies of Gulf states actually deteriorated with the economic situations created by COVID-19 period. Also, how can this period of normalization between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and also the normalization in a regional sense, can affect Turkey's relations with the Gulf? I can say that normalizations at this level seems to be a quite happy development for the regional level. But how long this regional normalization trend will last actually will actually stem from the other actors' developments and other actors' policies, especially Iran, especially the United States, especially Russia, and especially China. There is always room for improvement in normalizations, but it is important to define and articulate how are going to they last.
And what about please, Mr. Mahjoob?
Yeah, and I just want to just a quick comment on what Ali was saying. I don't think the talk between Saudi Arabia and Iran is genuine. I think the two countries are suffering from what I call it a political liquidity in the region. There is uncertainty about how this administration will handle a lot of files. Of course, they are not really a friend of Saudi Arabia. They are not a friend of Iran. I mean Biden administration, and also the crisis is facing the two countries. So they are looking for exit strategy. The exit strategy is to engage in a discussion. Now, this engagement is not sincere. Why I'm saying this? I can give you two evidence. Just in a matter of 48 hours, the time they talk about that the negotiation is positive, the Prince Faisal bin Farhan, the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia, was actually accusing Iran of being a reason for instability in the region, and its nuclear program is a serious threat to the region. And he asks 5+1, the group, to focus on the regional role on the negotiations in next round of the negotiation. So I don't think this is genuine, effort to reconciliate. I think they are buying time to see where things are moving, where things are heading. Especially Saudi Arabia is facing real challenge with situation in Yemen. Iran is facing challenge with its neighboring countries, and I think there is a group in Iran who believe that Saudi Arabia should be should the door always be open, and I think that is the reason why we saw this negotiation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very fruitful panel, let's say. I really enjoying the time here with you. Hope we have other cooperations in the future. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.